Peter and John. And Peter and John all came back to the tomb. And each one saw the folded napkin. But each one perceived something different in the napkin. Mary saw the napkin. She just glanced and turned away. Peter saw the napkin. He looked at the grave clothes and looked for what was missing, but he didn't understand. And John saw the same thing that Peter and Mary saw. He saw a folded napkin, but John was looking through spiritual eyes. And John was like the CSI. He wasn't looking for what was missing, but what was left behind. And what was left behind was a folded napkin. Now, there were 3 different responses to the empty tomb. Just as there are 3 responses to the word today. Some folk are like Mary, they come into the church. They just look around to see what's going on. Then they leave the same way that they came. And then there are some folk like Peter. They come to the church. They listen to the sermon. And they wonder, is it really real? Or was he really talking to me? But then there are some folk like John. They come to the service and they hear the sermon. But not only do they hear the sermon, they hear the message in the sermon. You see, everybody hears the sermon, but not everybody hears the message in the sermon. And so John was looking not for what was missing, but what was there. And what was there was the folded napkin. Yes, the body of Jesus was truly gone. The linen strips and the burial clothes were lying there just as they were. Jesus didn't have to wiggle to get out of the burial clothes. Jesus didn't have to wrestle to set himself free. But the grave clothes were still wrapped in the same manner that they were when they were around his body, lying there as if somehow Jesus had just evaporated through the clothes. But then verse 8 says, then went in that other disciple. He saw and believed. What was it that John saw that made him believe? It wasn't the stone rolled away that made John believe. It wasn't the removal of the Roman seal that confirmed his faith. It wasn't the missing body that caused John to believe. It is not what's missing that caused him to believe, but what was left behind caused John to believe. And what was left behind was a folded napkin. A few years ago when I worked at the Med, the staff got together and got me and Sandra a reservation for the Crescent Club. Now the Crescent Club is a 5-star restaurant in the Crescent Center. In the Crescent Club, you have your own private dining room. In the Crescent Club, you have a personal waiter who's there just to serve your needs. At the Crescent Club, he brought me a menu with my name printed on the menu. At the Crescent Club, you eat out of the finest china and you drink from crystal glasses. At the Crescent Club, the tablecloth and napkins are made of the finest Egyptian cotton. At the Crescent Club, if you enjoyed your meal, you don't go up to the cook and say, I really enjoyed this dinner. You see, the Crescent Club is not a 4-way grill. But at the Crescent Club, you communicate your satisfaction to the maitre d' by the way you leave your napkin. If the meal didn't meet your satisfaction, if the service wasn't up to your standards, if your palate wasn't completely satisfied, if you felt like your time wasn't well spent, And you don't plan to ever come back to the Crescent Club again. You communicate your satisfaction and your intention whether or not to return by the way you leave your napkin. If you weren't satisfied with the service and you don't plan to come back again, you just take your napkin and you bottle up your napkin. And you leave a balled up napkin on your table. But on the other hand, if the service exceeded your expectations, if the meal met everything that you thought it was going to be, if you feel like your time was well spent, if your palate has been satisfied and it tickled your taste buds, if you accomplished everything you set out to do and you plan to come back again, well, you communicate your satisfaction to the Maitre d' by the way you leave your napkin. If you plan to come back to the Crescent Club again, then you fold your napkin and leave your folded napkin on the table. And the folded napkin communicates to the Maitre d' that the customer was satisfied with everything that went on. And he planned to come back to the Crescent Club again. Well, when Jesus got up that resurrection morning, he looked back over his ministry. He looked from the first to the last. He looked from the beginning to the end. He looked from Bethlehem to Golgotha. He looked from Genesis to Revelation. All the prophecies had been fulfilled. He had come down through 42 generations. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. He accomplished everything he came to do when he hung out on Calvary's cross and cried out with 72 thorns around his head. It is finished. Jesus did everything he came down to do. Jesus was completely satisfied with his ministry when he got up.